The global hair loss industry is, it's worth billions of dollars right now.
Oh, easily billions. Yeah.
And yet, biologically speaking, putting 99% of those miracle growth serums on your scalp has about as much chance of altering your actual hair cycle as, I don't know, watering a dead plant.
It is a phenomenal marketing illusion. It really is. We're so conditioned to believe that if we just find that one right, exotic botanical extract, we can somehow force our hair follicles into overdrive.
Right, like pulling on a plant to make it grow faster.
Exactly. But the reality of formulation and, well, biology, it tells a completely different story.
So if you're out there developing a hair oil product, or maybe you're sourcing ingredients for an indie brand, or even if you're just an insanely curious consumer who wants to know what you're actually buying and putting on your head, you have to look past those emotional promises.
You really do.
So today we are giving you the ultimate playbook. We're doing a deep dive, looking under the hood of the beauty industry to figure out how premium, transparent products are actually built from the ground up.
And to do this, we're unpacking a really comprehensively detailed guide by Laurent Fabian from Ingredientsage. It's titled Hair Oils and Hair Growth, a comprehensive guide.
It's an incredible resource.
It really is a masterclass in separating cosmetic reality from marketing fiction.
Yeah, so the mission for this deep dive is super clear. We are cutting through the hype to look at the actual science of scalp health.
Right.
We're going to explore the precise quality indicators for raw ingredients, the complex strategies behind, formulating for different hair types, and the high-stakes regulatory realities of building a hair oil that actually complies with the law.
And I think the best place to start is the sheer gap between what consumers wish a product could do and what human biology actually permits.
Yeah, the biology check.
Right. Because before a developer can even think about ordering a drum of raw oil, they have to understand the hair growth cycle itself.
Let's unpack that factory process, actually, because it really is like a microscopic factory on your scalp.
Yeah.
And it operates in 3 distinct phases, right? Anagen, catagen, and telogen.
Exactly. So the anagen phase is the active continuous growth phase. This is when the hair follicle is physically producing new hair fiber.
And that lasts a while, right?
It does. It can last anywhere from 2 to 7 years, but then the factory shuts down for maintenance.
Right.
That's the catagen phase, which is just a brief transitional period. And finally, the hair enters telogen, the resting phase. That lasts a few months and eventually leads to the hair shedding, so a new anagen cycle can begin.
Okay, so the giant leap that marketing takes away from the actual science is this claim that a topical oil can somehow speed up or, I don't know, extend that anagen phase.
Yes, and the source makes it abundantly clear. High-quality clinical evidence directly linking purely cosmetic topical oils to a robust, measurable increase in follicle activity is, well, it's virtually non-existent.
Wait, really? Non-existent?
Practically, yeah.
Yeah.
Genetics, age, hormones, systemic nutrition, those are the heavy hitters dictating the length and vigor of your anagen phase.
Wow.
A topical oil simply does not possess the biochemical authority to override natural biology. You cannot apply a plant extract to a resting telogen follicle and just compel it to start sprouting fiber.
So if a formulator is sitting in a lab staring at a brief from a brand that demands, quote, rapid, dramatic hair growth, they're basically being asked to defy biology.
Completely.
It sounds like formulating a hair oil is less about, pulling on the plant to make it grow and entirely about creating a really highly optimized soil environment.
The soil analogy is perfect. I love that. The focus has to shift from the follicle deep inside the dermis to the scalp surface and the existing hair shaft.
Okay, that makes sense.
The guide includes a very grounding perspective from a dermatology expert. They say topical oils improve scalp moisture and barrier function, which reduces breakage and irritation.
Great.
And indirectly, this preserves the hair you already have and supports a healthier environment overall.
So it's an indirect benefit.
Yeah.
You want growing hair faster. You're just stopping the hair you do have from snapping off at the shoulder.
Exactly. When clinical scientists and, ethical formulators test these products, they aren't counting new hair sprouts on someone's head. They use surrogate measures.
Like what? What are they actually measuring?
A primary one is measuring transepidermal water loss, or TEWL.
TWL, right?
Yeah, this calculates exactly how much moisture is evaporating through the scalp barrier. They also test the tensile strength and the elasticity of the hair shaft itself.
For someone actually building a brand, that requires a massive pivot in strategy.
It demands a pivot toward consumer-facing outcomes that are scientifically defensible. Formulators need to build their product narrative around reducing microdamage, improving manageability, and lowering that transepidermal water loss.
Which is way less flashy than grow 3 inches in a week.
It is, but setting realistic expectations around a healthier scalp environment builds long-term loyalty. Promising overnight length just guarantees a disappointed customer a month later.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So now that we know the biological goal is optimizing the soil and fortifying the hair shaft against breakage, let's open up the formulator's palette.
Let's do it.
Because not all oils perform the same function, and just dumping like 20 exotic-sounding botanicals into a vat isn't a real formulation strategy.
Oh, it's a recipe for an unstable, overly heavy, incredibly expensive mess. Ingredient selection requires understanding the actual molecular behavior of different oils.
Okay, let's look at the heavy hitters then, starting with one that dives really deep into the hair fiber coconut oil. The guide notes it's renowned for its high lauric acid content.
Lauric acid is the key here. It's a specific type of fatty acid with a straight-chain molecular structure and a relatively low molecular weight.
Okay, so it's small and straight.
Right.
Yep.
And because it's so straight and compact, it doesn't just sit on the surface of the hair. It physically slips inside the hair shaft, penetrating the cortex.
Which gives it an incredible affinity for keratin, right? The protein that makes up our hair.
Exactly. By penetrating the shaft, coconut oil takes up space inside the fiber, which actually reduces protein loss when you wash your hair.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it stops the hair from swelling up too much with water, which is a major cause of structural damage. But a developer has a critical choice to make here: virgin coconut oil versus fractionated coconut oil.
And those are vastly different materials to work with. I mean, virgin coconut oil smells amazing, like a tropical vacation, but it goes totally solid at room temperature.
Which is a nightmare if you're trying to sell a liquid serum in a dropper bottle.
Exactly.
So fractionated coconut oil solves that. The fractionation process essentially removes the long-chain fatty acids, leaving mostly medium-chain triglycerides.
Okay.
The resulting oil stays liquid, it feels much lighter, and it's highly stable. But the trade-off is that you lose some of that pure lauric acid penetration.
Ah, so it's a compromise.
Yeah, a formulator has to weigh the sensory appeal and shelf stability against the raw biological efficacy.
That's fascinating. Okay, contrast that deep penetration with an oil designed to sit on the outside and, like, build a shield. That brings us to castor oil.
Yes.
It has a massive reputation online for hair growth support.
It does, and that reputation is largely driven by ricinoleic acid, which makes up about 90% of its profile. It offers some really impressive anti-inflammatory properties.
Right.
But chemically, castor oil is incredibly viscous. The molecular structure makes it thick, sticky, and heavy.
Oh, yeah. If you've ever tried to wash pure castor oil out of your hair, you know it is literally like trying to shampoo away industrial glue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If a brand simply bottles pure castor oil and tells consumers to massage it into their scalp, it can actually occlude the follicles.
It suffocates them.
It creates a suffocating barrier that traps dead skin cells and sebum, which leads to inflammation. That is the exact opposite of a healthy scalp environment.
Right, so castor oil is brilliant, but it must be heavily diluted in complex blends to offer protection without occlusion. So if coconut oil is driving deep and castor oil is building a heavy shield on the outside, a formulator needs something to balance the whole formula out. Something that mimics the scalp's natural environment. Enter jojoba oil.
Jojoba is biologically fascinating because, well, it isn't technically an oil, it's a liquid wax ester.
And because of that specific chemical structure, it's almost identical to human sebum, right? The natural moisturizing oil our own sebaceous glands produce.
It's the ultimate balancing act. Jojoba provides incredible slip and moisturization without the heavy, greasy feeling of a triglyceride oil. It's universally well tolerated.
And for developers, the quality indicators here are non-negotiable, right?
Absolutely. They need cold-processed jojoba to ensure those complex wax esters aren't degraded by high heat during extraction.
So building a good formula is basically like building a wardrobe. You wouldn't wear a heavy winter parka indoors. That's your pure castor oil. It's suffocating. You need a breathable windbreaker, which is your jojoba, acting as a lightweight base. And then you strategically add the parka material only where you need heavy protection, like the damaged ends of the hair.
I love the clothing analogy. That structural approach is exactly why contract manufacturers rely on complex blends. They're balancing the molecular weights.
Okay, that makes sense.
They'll use argan oil, for instance, as a co-emollient. It's rich in linoleic and oleic acids, so it helps modify the spreadability of the heavier oils, making the entire formula feel luxurious and reducing frizz, while the jojoba balances the scalp and the castor seals the split ends.
But a premium oil blend doesn't stop at carrier oils. The source highlights the active botanical kickers, the essential oils. Rosemary and tea tree are the prime examples here.
Right. Essential oils are highly concentrated volatile compounds. Rosemary essential oil has actually been explored in clinical settings because it may modestly influence microcirculation.
So basically helping blood flow in the scalp.
Yes. And tea tree oil is rich in terpene and phorol, giving it documented antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory potential, which is highly relevant for itchy or flaky scalps.
But the golden rule for developers working with these actives is severe dilution. The guide states essential oils must be diluted to roughly 0.5 to 2% in a carrier oil.
Applying undiluted essential oils is a fast track to severe contact dermatitis.
Yikes.
But dilution is also a matter of unit economics. True, pure essential oils are incredibly expensive.
Which brings up a massive issue in the supply chain: adulteration. You can't just order a drum of rosemary oil from a cheap supplier and assume it's pure.
No, developers have to be ruthless with quality control. They must demand GCMS data, that's gas chromatography mass spectrometry.
Which sounds incredibly complex.
It is, but it breaks down the exact molecular signature of the oil, proving it hasn't been cut with synthetic fragrances or cheaper carrier oils.
Right.
They need certificates of analysis verifying the specific terpene content. If your tea tree oil doesn't have the right percentage of active terpenes, it's just fragrant water.
The stakes for the formulator are incredibly high here. You spend all this capital sourcing cold-pressed carrier oils and GCMS-verified essential oils. If you don't package them correctly, the entire batch is ruined.
Yes. Fatty acids are highly susceptible to oxidation. When they're exposed to UV light and ambient heat, they break down, release free radicals, and just go rancid.
Oh, gross.
The product will literally smell like old paint. Brands have to invest in dark glass, UV protective PE plastics, and airtight pump mechanisms to protect the chemical integrity of the formula on the retail shelf.
Okay, so let's say a brand builds this masterfully balanced, perfectly packaged formula. They can't just market it as a universal cure-all, right?
Definitely not.
Different soil types require totally different treatments.
Right.
Designing for specific scalp conditions is what separates a cheap generic product from a premium targeted brand.
Formulation is all about addressing the specific microenvironment. Let's look at oily scalps, for example, which presents a really interesting challenge.
It feels like a massive logical contradiction. If a consumer already has an oily scalp, telling them to purchase a product made entirely of oil sounds like a recipe for a clogged, greasy disaster.
Right?
Why would a developer even target an oily scalp with these products?
It seems counterintuitive until you look at the mechanism of sebum overproduction. Often, oily scalps are the result of overstripping.
Oh, from like harsh shampoos.
Exactly. Consumers use harsh, high-sulfate shampoos that strip the scalp barrier. The sebaceous glands panic and overproduce sebum to compensate, leading to rebound seborrhea.
So the scalp is desperately overcompensating for being dried out.
Precisely. By applying a lightweight sebum-mimicking liquid wax like jojoba, alongside very low concentrations of balancing essential oils, the formulator is essentially hacking the scalp's signaling system.
Hacking the system. That's so cool.
The jojoba sits on the surface and signals to the sebaceous glands that the barrier is adequately moisturized. The glands slow down their own production, but the formula must be strictly limited to those lightweight esters, avoiding heavy occlusives entirely.
The exact opposite logic applies to dry or curly hair, though.
Yes.
The structure of curly hair makes it physically difficult for natural sebum to travel from the scalp down the spiral of the hair shaft. That's why the ends dry out and snap.
So for that demographic, the developer needs to rely on the heavier conditioning oils, the castor and argan blends.
Okay.
But the marketing and application instructions have to change. The brand must instruct the consumer to focus application on the mid-lengths and ends for moisture retention and structural protection, applying very sparingly to the scalp itself.
Sensitive scalps lead us straight into an entirely different set of stakes, don't they? This is where a bad formulation doesn't just mean a greasy hair day. It means a painful reaction.
Developing for sensitive scalps requires absolute restraint. Formulators must offer fragrance-free variants, stripping out the volatile essential oils completely.
Right. No rosemary or tea tree here.
Instead, they incorporate soothing, barrier-repairing compounds. The guide specifically mentions bisabolol, which is isolated from chamomile, or aloe-derived extracts.
And the packaging must explicitly mandate patch testing.
It is an ethical and liability necessity. Consumers must be instructed to test the product on a small patch of skin 24 hours before broader use.
Which brings us perfectly to the final and arguably most treacherous phase of product development, the regulatory rulebook.
Yes, the red tape.
You have a scientifically sound, perfectly blended product.
Yeah.
How do you label and sell it without the FDA or the European Commission just pulling it off the shelves?
Well, the regulatory landscape all hinges on intent and claims. In the United States, the FDA draws a very hard line between a cosmetic and a drug. A cosmetic is intended to cleanse, beautify, or alter the appearance.
And no major regulatory body approves hair growth claims for consumer oils marketed as cosmetics.
None. The moment a brand implies a medical indication, the moment the label claims the oil biologically alters the follicle, extends the anagen phase, or cures alopecia, it crosses the line.
And what happens then?
The FDA will classify it as an unapproved new drug. That triggers demands for rigorous clinical trials and usually results in warning letters and product seizures.
Wow.
If it's a cosmetic, you can only claim cosmetic benefits, reducing breakage, improving shine, moisturizing the scalp.
The European Union takes labeling even further, though. It isn't just about what you claim the product does. It's about extreme transparency regarding what is actually in the bottle.
The EU mandates strict INCI labeling, that's the International Nomenclature of Cosmetic Ingredients. Every component must be listed by its standardized scientific name.
Right.
Furthermore, the EU has incredibly strict allergen declarations. Remember those essential oils we discussed?
Yeah.
Many of their natural components, like linalool or limon, are recognized allergens. If they're present above a certain minute threshold, they must be explicitly declared on the packaging.
So brands really have to be meticulous. Sourcing transparency is no longer optional. Labels need clear origin details, explicit expiry dates, and batch numbers. If a raw ingredient supplier has a contamination issue, a brand needs that batch number to execute a targeted recall.
And explicit application instructions are vital. If a product contains active essential oil blends, the brand should advise users to wash their hands after application.
Oh, to avoid accidentally transferring volatile compounds to sensitive areas like the eyes?
Exactly.
Looking at all these constraints, it seems like radical transparency is actually the smartest, most profitable marketing strategy.
It really is.
Instead of risking a lawsuit by promising Rapunzel hair in a week, a smart brand just leans into the science. They say, here is our GCMS-tested cold-pressed jojoba and argan blend. It won't resurrect dead follicles, but it will dramatically fortify the hair you have.
And the current market heavily rewards that approach. Consumers are suffering from claim fatigue.
Oh, big time.
They're tired of miracle promises that don't deliver. A clean label with a clear, verifiable sourcing story builds intense brand loyalty. A reputable brand acknowledges its own boundaries.
The guide even insists that honest brands should actively tell consumers to seek out a dermatologist or a trichologist if they're experiencing sudden or severe hair loss.
Because sudden hair density changes could signify underlying medical conditions, autoimmune alopecia, fungal infections, thyroid issues, or even systemic nutritional deficiencies.
And a cosmetic oil will not fix a medical crisis.
No. Pointing a consumer toward medical help rather than just selling them another bottle of serum is the ultimate proof of a brand's integrity.
We have covered incredible ground today. We took the emotional, promise-driven world of hair oil formulation and basically stripped it down to the biological and chemical realities.
We examined why formulators must pivot from the myth of altering the anagen phase and focus entirely on optimizing the scalp's microenvironment and reducing transepidermal water loss.
Right, and we look at how developers build a formula by balancing molecular weights using the deep penetrating straight chains of lauric acid in coconut oil, the heavy protective seal of castor oil, and the brilliant sebum-mimicking liquid wax of jojoba.
Yeah, we explored the high stakes of sourcing GCMS-tested essential oils, protecting them from oxidation, and targeting those complex blends to specific scalp types, whether it's calming rebound seborrhea or protecting fragile curls.
And we navigated that intense regulatory rulebook, highlighting why transparent INCI labeling and strict adherence to cosmetic rather than medical claims are just essential for survival in the global market.
We covered a lot.
Whether you're a chemist mixing raw ingredients in a lab to launch an indie beauty brand, or you're simply a consumer standing in the hair care aisle trying to decode an ingredient list, you now have the exact blueprint for what makes a truly premium hair oil. You know exactly how to look past the marketing hype and demand biological proof.
But, there is a broader implication to consider as we wrap up.
Okay.
We've firmly established that current cosmetic science is entirely restricted to creating a favorable microenvironment. Topicals act as fertilizer for the soil, preserving what's already there. They do not accelerate the biology of the follicle itself.
The boundary between a cosmetic and a pharmaceutical is absolute right now.
Right now, yes. But biotechnology is accelerating rapidly. What happens when researchers inevitably synthesize a topical compound that can safely, directly, and demonstrably alter the anagen phase?
Like a molecule that actually does speed up the factory without systemic side effects.
Exactly. When a brand can finally cross that line and deliver on the ultimate miracle growth promise, will regulators be forced to create an entirely new category between cosmetic and drug?
Wow.
And how will that single discovery completely dismantle and rebuild the multi-billion-dollar beauty industry as we know it?
That is a massive paradigm shift to think about the next time you're staring at those amber bottles on the retail shelf.